let's get going. Our session today is learning to work with AI. Remember the rules of the game. This is intended to be an interactive session, not a lecture. So please do engage with Petra using the chat box. So if you've got any questions or any comments, please put them into the chat box. And I will then moderate and I'll bring them to Petra's attention to comment on. You can't raise your hand and ask a question. So please do use the chat box. We've planned 3 sessions to start working or trying to understand what is happening with AI and how it's going to impact on the learning community. It seems to us that there are going to be some very profound changes that are happening. We're, I think, right in the middle of a major paradigm shift. We're going to be working with artificial intelligence. Our learners are working with artificial intelligence, and it's going to have a big impact on how we do things. So the session today is to really try and understand what is the state of play with artificial intelligence right now. And if you've been following anything on the media, you'll have seen that there is a vast amount of attention being paid to AI. Then on the 7th of July, we've asked Petra if she can talk around, and the title is Internalization of Knowledge Using AI Technologies. Essentially, what we're saying there is, in a world where our learners have access to an artificial intelligence, how does that change the role to be played by a facilitator or a learning and development manager? You know, how is your role different? If they can ask an artificial intelligence to outline the key topics or the key subheadings in a topic, and the key things that they need to know in a topic, and then give them information on it, how does it change the role of a facilitator? And then that's the 7th of July, so please diarize that if you're interested in this topic. And then on the 4th of August, William Rogers is going to talk around how do we know someone has become more competent in an AI world? If you think about all of the technologies, the measurement instruments, the assessment instruments that we currently use to assess learning, in a world where people have easy and constant access to AI, how many of those cannot be answered by the AI itself? And if that is the case, then what role is there to be played in assessment? And if we're trying to understand, has somebody gained better competence, how do we check it? It looks like we're going to have to throw pretty much all of our assessment instruments away. The current ones don't look fit for purpose. That's a huge challenge. So 4th of August, please also diarize that. And I think that the logic for us is that as skills development professionals, we're in this period of profound and fundamental change. I don't think that Petra or William or I know what's going to happen. So what we're trying to do in these conversations is unpack, explore, and trying to get to grips with what's going down. So Petra, with that as an intro, maybe you can say a few words about who you are and then take us through what your presentation holds for us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you for everyone for joining. Can you hear me? Just sure that if not, then I will get the echo.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Again, welcome, and it's really kind of my pleasure to actually be here and connect with everyone. We do a lot of work with actually with companies, small businesses around 4IR skills and 5IR skills. My passion specifically is 3D printing. I believe that actually 3D printing manufacturing is one of the future for Africa. But obviously any other exponential technology such as AI, VR, AR, robotics, and etc. is critical to augment ourselves and actually bring ourselves into the future so that we don't get left behind. And essentially today, I would like to talk to you a little bit more about where we are at the moment with AI and how we can actually move forward with it. And as Andy said, there's a lot more to it, but today is really an introduction where we actually hope that you can get a taste of it and you get excited. The most important thing is getting excited about this topic. I think there's been a lot of fear, and we would like to obviously avoid that. So without any more kind of waiting, let me share my screen Can you see
And
the
yes,
screen perfectly?
you're up.
I just want to make
Good
sure
to
that
know.
it's in a PowerPoint right presentation mode.
You're in the right place.
Wonderful. So once again, it's just to mention kind of why this is actually really, really important. We are really at the historical moment. We've been in those historical moments in the history, and there's always a moment where can we learn really from the past, and also is the past a good indicator of what's going to happen. But we really have to admit the fact that what's happening, and Kai-Fu Lee is one of those gurus in AI. He mentioned a very important sentence saying, I believe AI is going to change the world more than anything in the history of mankind, more than electricity. And this is big. And this is obviously a statement. And he published a book back in 2018 that is called AI Superpowers. And I love you, all of you, to read this book, even if it's back in 2018. Why is that? It's going to give you an incredible insight into really where we are at and what's happening in this kind of global expansion of AI between America, obviously, and China. There's a big focus on that, but you know how the developing world is looking in this race as well. And what's quite interesting is that when the book was published in 2018, and with someone like Kai-Fu Lee, who, as mentioned, is really the ultimate guru, where we are today, looking back, actually, what the predictions are, and has anything changed, and has he actually predicted where we are at today? How does that look like? And we're going to also spend a little bit of time on that. But please do yourself a favor and read this book. It's an amazing it's an amazing story as well about that AI speech. So when we look at AI today, what is the reality check essentially? And this is kind of the bit of a doom and gloom that we've heard from media coming at us. One side is looking at job losses. We're going to have incredible job losses. Up to 30% of total jobs will be lost, and there's the numbers between like now and 2030. McKinsey's obviously are putting out articles, Goldman Sachs, and these are big numbers. But obviously with that, we also need to look at jobs gained, right? New jobs being created. But job losses is the big, I think, for all of us in this room, that's where we want to spend our time today. Then there's this question.
Petra, what's your thinking? Is South Africa at particular risk with job losses? Because the job gains are likely to be more skilled people, and many of our people don't have that base level of skills. So are we more likely to experience job losses than job gains? What's your thinking?
Andy, that's a great question, and I would like to actually spend a bit more time on that, because it's not as a simple, straightforward answer between yes and no, but rather where those job losses will happen, at which part of the spectrum. And I will share with you actually some interesting stats as well in the next slides around that, and how much actually we need to really take this seriously, because the job losses are going to happen a lot between, obviously, on the lower side of the income generating jobs, and which is obviously in South Africa is these are big numbers, and you know, at the same time, the middle, you know, how does the middle kind of space of jobs look like, and what are the potentials there? So I'm going to spend a bit more time on that as well, Andy, and answer you a little bit more detail there, if that's okay.
Right.
The ethical snake bit is another big discussion when it comes to AI, but we would need to have lots more wine, Andy, to discuss something. I would come to Cape Town for that, about ethics and AI. This is really not for today's discussion. It's important to note is that actually the recent involvement, and I'm sure a lot of us are following this kind of news, this news, AI being in the news, that actually early this week, Geoffrey Hinton, who is considered to be the godfather of AI, resigned from Google after being a decade there. And he's really, he got the Turing Award, and he's really, again, one of those gurus. And what he said in the press release is to say, it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. I console myself with the normal excuse, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have. Now, again, you know, taken out of context, he also talked a lot positive, obviously, about AI and what Google is doing in a good way about AI. And I think we're going to hear more from him. But what's important is to know that, as you might have heard, the likes of Elon Musk and Wozniacki and etc., they are all basically signed also a petition to say, can we just hold on 1 second on this, because the regulation is not there yet. And we're not too sure. And the speed of what we're actually doing is way too fast. We didn't predict any of that. And can we just pause? But again, what's happening with that is that that's pretty much America talk, right? Not so much China talk. China is just powering ahead. So we also need to be careful when it comes to ethics, so that we don't get tangled into these long debates and discussions and regulations and etc. What actually EU is doing, and not progress and actually catch up on the likes of Asia, and they getting actually the leg up in terms of progress. And the other aspect is now around future of humanity. So there's the prediction by Ray Kurzweil, who's the co-founder in Singularity University, to say that by 2045, we will have multiplied the artificial intelligence, the human biological machine intelligence of our civilization 1 billion-fold. These are incredible numbers. And again, another discussion for another day, but because we are really, again, going through that historical pivotal moment, and it's an inflection moment in the history in terms of what actually AI is going to mean for us, for humanity, and how we're going to transform ourselves as humans, actually being part, and AI being part of us. So these are the kind of the 3 critical aspects to bear in mind. But are we at the question now is back to the jobs? And to even what you said, are we at the job apocalypse at the moment? And the point there is let's not be a Luddites. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the term Luddites, but essentially those were people back in 1900s who were actually demolishing and putting on fire factories, mainly textile factories, because they were taking jobs away from them. Because they were automated. So, and it's a very important part, but because we got from the 19th century where 90% of our jobs was in agriculture, to today. And it's important to know that if we didn't accept progress, and back in the day, our ancestors would put down fires as the greatest invention of mankind, we would never get to where we are today. So the key is not to be Luddites, but rather to embrace this new technology, put aside our fears, and understand what it means for us, and how can we actually bring it into everyday lives and work with it to actually us become better, for the humanity to become better.
Petra, so 2 comments. Janine Topping has very kindly given everybody a link to the book by Kai-Fu Lee. And a comment from John Arneson: as a boomer, I'm reminded of a talk about computers in the late 70s. Same scared talk. I do think humans are incredible, and just like we embraced and took advantage of computers, we will do the same with AI. Okay, cool.
Spot on. But obviously, you know, exact same fears in the 70s, absolutely. And look where we are today. But what did it mean even in the 70s? If you look at this graph, what we do need to acknowledge that technology made us more productive, right? That made us become, you know, in our performance skyrocketed. And you can actually see this graph in terms of productivity, how it actually showed up and how it's still continuing. This is American data, but, you know, globally very much similar. And what we are facing at the moment is what we call the Great Decoupling, which is actually the kind of the split between that productivity and when you look at employment and how does the employment curve look like. But the data suggests that is it more about job quality rather than quantity, right? I mean, you're familiar with the executives in South Africa even saying we can't find the right talent. So it's about, you know, finding the right talent for the jobs that are available. And we have 750,000 qualified graduates in South Africa that are jobless. And, you know, they are essentially looking for social grants. And that's the kind of the next aspect is around. And Andy, back to the question that you had earlier around what it means for South Africa around jobs and jobs losses, is that what we're seeing in terms of this great decoupling as well is the polarization of jobs and the inequality that actually is being created. So what we're seeing is that the growth is actually concentrated at the 2 ends of the job spectrum, the upper end and lower end. But what's actually worse for the low end jobs is that they don't see the growth in terms of their wages as the upper end sees. So what we're actually doing is that we're widening this gap more and more and more. The top end of the market is benefiting from this technological progress and everything. And the bottom of the jobs, which we still need, which is, somebody's looking after our gardens and homes and children, to make sure that we're safe and etc. Essentially, they're not benefiting from that growth in terms of, wealth. And it's the wealth is getting concentrated exactly in this one group of the haves. And that's what we need to reconsider completely. Not just the wealth, but now the power of the data. And now when it comes to AI, is that who owns the data? And again, it comes wealth with wealth and data and etc. So we just need to be very careful about how we're taking it forward and how that whole distribution of wealth is going to happen, and including those essentially other part of the job spectrum on the journey with us, to making sure that they have the right skills, because AI will contribute to increasing annual global GDP by 7% by 2030. So the question is now, how can South Africa benefit from a piece of that pie? And we're looking at about 375 million people that will be required to switch jobs categories entirely. There are numbers that up to 50% of actually jobs need to be completely reskilled by 2050. So these are, again, things that we need to consider moving forward. And that comes to reskilling and upskilling. And that's where you're the experts in the space, and we must make sure that we actually do it correctly. And the question is how to do this. Before we get
just two quick things. A comment from John Honest around definition of graduate.
Yes.
To be careful about it, he says, in my view, graduate refers to people who've attained a first degree. The level of unemployment in this category is around 5% only.
Right.
Other comment from me is that you're on 9:47, so time is running away.
Wow. Okay. Let me move forward quickly. We are, just before we get to that how, I'm just going to quickly mention the 4 waves of AI, just so that we know when we talk about AI, what is AI? Because we typically think it's the ChatGPT side of story. It's not just that, right? So we have the Kai-Fu Lee really identified beautifully. There are different ways of definitions about this. But the easiest way to really think about AI is that the first wave is the internet AI, is the browser. So if you think social media is then the algorithms are learning about our behavior, habits, and etc., so that they can personalized products to us and etc. Business AI is when we have deep learning algorithms assisting us to make better and more informed decisions. So there you need to think about huge breakthroughs in healthcare, biotech, space exploration, etc. The amount of data that actually AI can digest is incredible. Perception AI is when we now start upgrading this business AI, etc., with sensors, speech interfaces like Siri and Alexa. And now we start making even better informed decisions because we start getting more information plugged in. So think manufacturing quality inspections, for example, in that case. And then the autonomous AI, which then is then, obviously ability to sense and respond, manipulate objects. Typically, the example there is autonomous vehicles. We were supposed to be there 2015. According to Elon, we're not there yet today at all, but we're getting there for sure. But the artificial general intelligence, the AGI, is really the the evolution where we know that ChatGPT-5 is going to reach this space where it now starts reasoning, AI starts reasoning, communicating, it's aware of its mental state, can, based on the feedback, generate further interaction, thinks for itself, develop code, and etc. and etc. So ChatGPT-5 is going to become the AGI. Now, how far is that in the future? But even the greatest sometimes get it wrong. But so Kai-Fu Lee, back in 2018, he said that, don't worry, the creative jobs and the ones that deal with compassion and emotions are going to be spared at the early stages of AI evolutions. Well, how wrong is that, right? So if you look at all these creative spaces like scientists and artists and columnists, journalists, and etc., now everybody is like, oh my goodness, this is bigger than we thought it would be. And even a year ago, experts will tell you that they would never predict in terms of what's actually ChatGPT-4 and where the AI is going further, where it is today. And what's important just to understand, so these are the kind of the 4 evolutions where AI is kind of on its own and then obviously evolving with us as humans. But where we need to understand is that how can we as humans augment ourselves with AI so that we become more productive? So that gets back to the jobs and so forth. And if we look at the era of generative AI, so please go to any of these creative tools like DALL-E and Midjourney. This is actually a little game that I played yesterday when I was looking for a front cover slide for this presentation. I went to Shutterstock, and it's an image generating, as you know, platform. And that's what they sell. They actually have a new AI platform, and I typed in artificial intelligence. And this is the image that I got. To be honest with you, I don't like it that much. I much more prefer this one, which is still has that kind of human interactions with it. But the point is that in 18 months, probably even faster than that, this is probably the image that we're going to get from Shutterstock. So we must remember it's moving quickly. Now, what's happening in edtech at the moment, and because we are all mainly sitting kind of in that education space, I really wanted to focus on one sector so that we understand the impact that it's AI has on today and how those companies are being disrupted. So this is an example of actually Czech company called Czech. They are a very successful American company that provides tutoring services. They provide services around generating of, documentations for all sorts of purposes, checking for plagiarisms, selling textbooks, and etc. So in the skills development space. And now look at this. So they peaked because of COVID, incredible results, right, in terms of their market share. And then launch of GPT-4, they had actually their market cap dropped below their IPO 10, 12 years ago. So what does it mean? This looks like panic, right? So we all go as humanity like, oh, this is fantastic, let's invest. And it's like, let's panic and let's drop, and even big companies, can't protect themselves from those kind of revolutions. But the point is that what's going to happen going forward and is that the edtech space is going to grow, and the predictions are about 18%, which is big, which is really big. So being in the space is really offering more opportunities than ever before. And these are, for example, some of those growth rates for companies that you might know, like Udemy and Adapt. I would love you to please go and try. I'm sure you know Udemy, but Adapt is new. They are flying. They have free services that they provide. And they're also tailor-making it for companies to use their presentations, for example, and make easy courses for their employees. And they're adding AI, they're adding tools, language translation tools, and they're disrupting actually Udemy. And it's a beautiful tool for you to use as well for reskilling and upskilling. So go and use those kind of tools and look at what's happening in the edtech space and how you can use it for yourself in your environment.
And that make a comment on that. I think that my takeaway, and it comes back to that earlier slide that you had where you had AI and humans. We can stick our heads in the sand and try and ignore it.
Yes.
Or we can say it's something that we can use, and therefore, and we are going to use it. It's not going away. So how can we use it? And I got quite excited with edapt.com. I thought, hey, those are things I actually want to go, what are they doing that can help me in terms of what I do?
Correct. And that's spot on, and that's actually a beautiful segue into almost coming to the closure of our talk in terms of what should we do with these new opportunities and possibilities that actually AI offers us. And it's incredible. It's the new evolution and revolution and on all possible spectrum. So those large language modules, which is your chat box, your really clever chat box like ChatGPT-4, and generative AI are assisting us to become more productive already, right? And increase performance. I mean, teachers around the world already are using it to generate personalized lesson plans and etc. already. So it's not just, we kind of blaming the kids to say, oh, you're plagiarizing, or you're not, you're cheating. I love that one teacher who said, well, kids are going to cheat anyway. And so this is just another way, but it's rather to say, taking it away from us, to say, okay, it's here. I love what you said, Andy, around the Adapt. How do I take a tool like Adapt to actually make me better? We're dropping so many balls. Andy, I don't know about you, but I feel like every day I feel like I haven't achieved, half of the stuff that I wanted to do. And there are mundane tasks that I wish, somebody can take away from me. And it's things like, sending emails and marking some things. And it's not just the mundane things, but it's also a task that I wish I can get more data on, so that I can make better decisions and I can actually incorporate that data in the work that I do. So the key there is to really look at how can those tools augment us. The disadvantage at the moment that we have to be just cautious about, that's why it's kind of like the orange table, is that they are a bit costly. So you do need to obviously, for example, pay to, join once you exhaust your free, maybe, pass. How do you actually pay? Or you may have to have your internal corporate resources in IT to help you bring these tools into your company. So there are obviously costs associated to it. And the trustworthiness at the moment, everybody talks about it, but the trustworthiness is going to obviously disappear slightly, hopefully in time with more information. But what it means for now is that we're going to see a lot of misinformation coming out in the next, few years, or like from now to the short term future, is a lot of information that may damage, if you think about Cambridge Britannica, right? Now, exponential, it goes, those kind of things can really impact bring new ills and augment some of these ills that are in the society, and people might misuse it. And the worst part about it is not just adults, it's actually 15-year-old, 12-year-old kids that can by mistake do something. So we need to be really cautioning about that, but that's the ethics side of the story. But what it means for us as people, as professionals in the education space or in the learning space, and what can we do to actually use AI at the moment, is that you can use AI to personalize your tutoring. You can also, use it for language learning, such as practicing fluency, personalized lesson plans, as I mentioned already, customized feedback, automatic grading, including validation of results, so short answer questions and multiple choice questions. Create new practice tests, that, and you can even make it further, or new practice tests that kids or our employees, or people struggle the most in this area. This is fantastic. I mean, we can really, for the first time, push it even further. And that's where we need to start really playing with the AI to make us more productive. And this picture on its own, I mean, how much time do teachers spend on grading papers, which maybe, AI would be definitely probably in the long term better at doing in terms of the time consumption versus the time that the teacher now can spend actually with the students, really understanding the gaps that they have, getting more information in terms of practicing with them and so forth. So that's really the exciting side of what's actually coming in the space. And in closing, what is the biggest opportunity overall? So we have a lot of young adults facing us. So reskilling is key. We already mentioned it, and upskilling is key. There are tools that you should use today, like OpenAI Chat or Microsoft Bing. You need to obviously go through the journey of upskilling yourself, uncover the skills gaps, organize specific tasks, promote job shadowing, and so forth and so forth. And don't forget to upskill yourself, not just others in your organizations, and do it today. And this is really the way I would like to leave it. Keep on upskilling yourself, invest in new technology, and don't be fearful. So Andy, I think I managed to get in on time.
You did that perfectly. We've got about 30 seconds to go. Comment from Miranda Ritter. Thanks, Petra. Now I know a bit more than before, a very grey area. I echo what Miranda is saying. I think that there's so much new stuff that's coming down at us. I certainly myself am finding this kind of, there's a couple of areas, and we'll explore in our next session, what can the facilitators do in a world where there's AI available to them and to their learners. But you also think about yourself in terms of your management role, the tasks that you're going to be able to get more mileage out of. So for example, with Microsoft Copilot and the use of Outlook, relatively soon, I think we'll be able to get an AI to scan our incoming email, to auto-respond to the ones that can be auto-responded to, and highlight the ones to us that need a more careful thought, and give us a draft of what, you know, so I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff coming our way. And wherever we are working, we can start exploring that. So I'm very interested to see how this all folds. Some other comments from the group. John Anderson, brilliant talk. Thanks. Very informative. Thank you from Facility. Sylvia, thank you. Excellent presentation. Sharon, we need more discussion around this topic. Liesl, thank you. Petra, Janine, thank you. There's the link to get your CPD points. So please, if you're looking for CPD points, click on the link. So lots and lots of thank yous there coming from the
everyone.
group.
Thanks for engaging.
This has been great. Petra, thank you so much. We've really appreciated the time.
Only a pleasure. Thank you. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye then.